You know what's strange? We have this beautiful, almost romantic idea of what silence is. We call it golden, we chase it with noise-canceling headphones, and we seek it out in nature, thinking it's this passive, empty space where our minds can finally rest. But here's the psychological paradox at the heart of this: what if true, absolute silence isn't peaceful at all? There's a place on earth so quiet it's measured in negative decibels. A place where the loudest sound is your own body. But the most unsettling thing you'll experience is what happens when your brain, starved of all sound, starts inventing a reality that isn't there. The myth of silence. The truth is, your brain has a complicated relationship with nothingness. It's a pattern recognition machine, and when you take away all the external sound it uses to understand the world, it doesn't just go quiet, it starts to revolt. To really understand this, we have to go to a place engineered to absorb almost all sound on the planet, an anechoic chamber. The word anechoic literally means without echo. These rooms are designed to absorb over 99.9% of sound and block out any noise from the outside world. One of the most famous is at Microsoft's headquarters, but the current record holder for quiet is at Orfield Laboratories in Minneapolis. It's built like a concrete box inside another concrete box, all resting on vibration-damping springs. Now, here's something interesting to pause on. The quiet inside has been measured at negative 24.9 decibels. That number can be a little misleading. It doesn't mean sound is literally less than zero. 0 decibels is just a reference point for the softest sound a healthy human ear can typically detect, so a negative decibel measurement means the ambient noise level is below that threshold. It is a level of quiet so profound, it feels unnatural.
And when your brain is confronted with that level of nothing, it starts a desperate search for something. That's when you find out that silence isn't empty. It's filled with you. The architecture of nothingness. So, how do you build a room that breaks the fundamental rules of how we experience sound? Every moment of your life, you are surrounded by sound waves bouncing off surfaces. That's what an echo is. It's what reverberation is. This constant feedback is how your brain unconsciously builds a 3D map of your environment, understanding the size of a room and your position in it. It's always orienting itself using these tiny, reflected vibrations. An anechoic chamber is engineered to destroy that entire process. The first step is isolation, with thick walls of concrete and steel forming a barrier to the outside world. But the real magic is what's on the inside. The walls, ceiling, and floor are covered in huge, deep wedges of sound-absorbing fiberglass, often a meter deep.
When a sound wave hits one, instead of bouncing back, it gets trapped in the narrow gaps, losing energy with each tiny reflection until it just dies. To even walk inside, you have to cross a suspended mesh floor made of aircraft cable, because a solid floor would reflect sound. The moment that heavy, bank vault door closes, the world as you know it acoustically disappears. There are no echoes, a sound leaves your mouth and simply never comes back. It feels deeply unnatural, because it is. You're in a sensory void, and your brain, starved of one of its most fundamental tools, enters a state of hyperalertness. It begins to turn up the gain on the only source of sound left, your own body. The journey inward. Walking into an anechoic chamber is a strange, unfolding experience. The first thing many people notice is a weird pressure in their ears, as the subtle, constant push of sound waves is suddenly gone. Then, the heavy, insulated door swings shut with a final thud, and the outside world is erased. For a few seconds, it might feel peaceful, but that's just the opening act. Then, the show inside your own head begins. You become aware of your own breathing, not just the feeling of it, but the sound, a raspy, mechanical noise that seems impossibly loud. You swallow, and it's a wet, guttural sound inside your skull. The rustle of your clothes can sound like a crackling fire. This is where the journey gets truly strange. You stand perfectly still, but you can't escape the noise. Because now, your brain, desperate for input, is cranking up its own sensitivity. You begin to hear a low, rhythmic thumping. It's your own heartbeat, but it's an audible, percussive sound, like someone drumming softly in the room with you. Then you might notice a faint, high-pitched hiss or whine.
Some people identify this as the sound of their own nervous system, though it's more accurately described as a form of tinnitus, a sound your brain generates internally. Then comes the other biological noise. You might hear the gurgling of your stomach, or the slow hydraulic rush of blood moving through your head and neck. Visitors have reported hearing the wet click of their eyelids as they blink. You're no longer in a silent room. You are inside a biological machine, and for the first time, you are hearing all the messy, constant processes that keep you alive. In an anechoic chamber, you don't just experience the absence of sound. You become the sound. The brain's betrayal. What you're experiencing here isn't just a trick of the ears. It's a profound neurological event. In a normal environment, your auditory cortex is busy filtering out unimportant noise. But when that external input drops to almost zero, it doesn't just go to sleep. It does the opposite. Think of it like a microphone's gain function. Your brain turns up its own sensitivity, desperately listening for a signal. Since there's no external signal, it starts amplifying the only vibrations available, the ones from inside your body. That heartbeat, that blood flow, they were always there, but your brain was filtering them out. Now, they're the main event. But this hypersensitivity often leads to something even stranger: auditory hallucinations. The auditory cortex, starved for meaningful patterns, can start generating its own signals from scratch. Researchers call this faulty source monitoring, where the brain misattributes the source of a sound, in this case, inventing one where none exists. People report hearing phantom buzzing, ringing, or even faint, indistinct music or voices. At the same time, another part of your brain kicks into high gear: the default mode network, or DMN.
This is the brain's background processing system, the part associated with introspection and self-referential thought. When external stimuli vanish, your internal monologue can become intensely loud. And then there's the disorientation. Because we use sound and echoes to orient ourselves in space, their absence can make you feel unsteady. Many people report finding it difficult to stand for long periods and need to sit down. Your brain, the one organ you trust to tell you what's real, is now actively inventing a reality, both auditorily and spatially. It's lying to you, because the truth of absolute nothingness is a problem it feels it has to solve. The climax of disorientation. The peak of the anechoic chamber experience is often a moment of profound, and for some, terrifying clarity. It's the point where all these strange sensations come together into one overwhelming feeling of disconnection. You're likely sitting on the mesh floor, because standing feels unstable.
The silence is no longer a void. It's a symphony of your own biology. The relentless thump of your heart is the beat, and the high-frequency hiss of internal noise is a constant, unnerving static. Time itself can begin to warp. Without external cues, your brain's internal clock can go haywire. 10 minutes can feel like an hour. You are adrift in a sea of pure subjectivity. This is the moment the lie becomes complete. Your brain has built an entire sensory world out of nothing. It has given you sounds to hear and a sense of imbalance to feel. This is why it's famously reported that few people have managed to stay inside Orfield Lab's chamber for more than 45 minutes. It's not a physical limit, but a psychological one. The experience of having your own perception so thoroughly manipulated by your own mind is profoundly jarring. It's the ultimate confrontation with the fact that you don't experience reality directly. You experience a story your brain tells you about reality. And in the quietest room on earth, that story becomes a work of pure fiction. Stepping out of an anechoic chamber is just as jarring as stepping in. The heavy door opens, and the world rushes back. The hum of the air conditioning, the sound of your footsteps on a solid floor, it's a tidal wave of sensory information. The experience leaves you with a lasting takeaway. Your brain is not a passive receiver of information. It's an active, predictive machine, constantly building a model of the world. We think of silence as an absence, but the brain treats it as a puzzle to be solved. Deprived of the external noise it relies on, it simply creates its own. Your brain lies to you in the quietest room on earth, not out of malice,
but out of a desperate, biological need for a world to interpret. It proves that the world you perceive is not the world as it is, but the world as your brain presents it to you. And sometimes, to appreciate the richness of that presentation, you have to experience what it's like when there's nothing left to present. What do you think is the loudest sound your body makes that you almost never hear? And how long do you honestly think you could last in that kind of silence? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'm genuinely curious to hear what you think. And if you enjoy exploring the strange ways our brains shape our reality, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.